In the quiet town where the streets always seemed to hum with the chatter of children returning from school, and where the trees leaned just slightly toward the sidewalks as if trying to listen in, there lived a grandfather named Samuel. To most people he appeared like any other elderly man, moving slowly but steadily, with hands that trembled slightly when he lifted his teacup, and a gaze that sometimes lingered on the horizon, as though he were searching for something far away. To his granddaughter Lily, however, he was nothing short of extraordinary. She was only 8 years old, curious, lively, and filled with the kind of unguarded trust that children carry naturally. Their bond had grown especially strong after Lily's parents found themselves working long hours, often leaving Samuel to be both guardian and companion. Many in the neighborhood whispered that it was unusual to see a grandfather so deeply involved in the daily life of a child. But to Samuel, it was never a burden. Instead, it was a second chance. A chance to pour into Lily all the lessons he had collected across decades, lessons that perhaps he hadn't been able to share with his own children when he was younger and busier. Every morning, Samuel prepared breakfast not with speed but with care, slicing fruit into little shapes that made Lily laugh before she even took her first bite. He told her stories of when he was a boy, of the games played on dusty roads and of the neighbors who became lifelong friends. Lily, wide-eyed, absorbed every word, sometimes asking him to repeat the same tale night after night, and Samuel never refused. Their days often blended work with wonder. He taught her how to plant seeds in the garden, showing her the patience required to watch something so small grow into something strong and fruitful. Lily learned not just how to garden but how to wait, how to trust time, and how to marvel at small beginnings. He taught her to listen, truly listen, not just to people but to the rustling of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the rhythm of rain on the window. Kindness, he often said, was not just what you gave to people, but also how gently you treated the world around you. One particular afternoon remained etched in Lily's memory forever. It was a warm spring day, and Samuel had promised to take her to the park after finishing some chores. Lily, impatient, asked over and over if it was time to leave yet. Samuel, instead of growing frustrated, simply smiled and said, "Kindness waits, little one, and it always gives more than it takes." When they finally left the house, Samuel carried a small bag with breadcrumbs for the birds, a thermos of tea, and 2 cookies wrapped in napkins. At the park, he placed Lily on the swing, gently pushing her higher and higher until her laughter filled the air. But then he did something that surprised her. He walked over to a bench where an elderly woman sat alone, her face lined with years of solitude. He offered her a cookie, just as if she were part of their little outing, and sat beside her for a while. Lily watched from the swing as her grandfather listened intently to the woman, nodding, smiling, sometimes reaching out to pat her hand. It was as if he had known her forever, though Lily was certain this was their first meeting. Later, when Lily asked why he did that, Samuel answered simply, "Because kindness is never wasted, and sometimes the smallest gesture is the one someone remembers most." From that day on, Lily began to notice how her grandfather's life was a trail of small kindnesses. He carried groceries for neighbors without being asked. He repaired broken toys for children who couldn't afford new ones, and he even made birdhouses out of scraps of wood, so the sparrows would have a safe place during storms. To Lily, it seemed that her grandfather had a secret treasure chest, but instead of gold or jewels, it was filled with kindness, and he handed it out freely to anyone in need. Over time, she began imitating him in her own ways. She shared her crayons at school. She comforted classmates when they felt sad, and she even started leaving little notes for her parents saying she loved them, hidden in their work bags so they would find them during long, stressful days. The greatest act of kindness Samuel ever showed Lily, however, was not in what he did for others, but in what he gave to her directly, his time. In an age when everyone seemed busy, when adults rushed from one task to another, Samuel always had time for Lily. He listened to her stories about imaginary kingdoms. He admired her wobbly drawings as though they belonged in a gallery, and he patiently taught her how to read more difficult books, cheering her on when she stumbled over hard words. To her, his time was the most precious gift, one that made her feel valued, safe, and loved beyond measure. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace reading together, Lily turned to her grandfather and asked, "What will happen when you're not here anymore?" The question hung in the air, heavy yet innocent. Samuel closed the book gently, looked at her with eyes that had seen many winters. and said, "Then you will carry my kindness in your heart. And every time you choose to be gentle, every time you choose to help, I will still be with you." Lily didn't fully understand then, but she felt comforted, as though kindness itself was a bridge that could outlast even time. Years later, long after Samuel had passed, Lily grew into a young woman who carried his lessons wherever she went. She volunteered at shelters, tutored younger children who struggled with reading, and became known in her community not for grand gestures, but for the way she made everyone feel seen and valued. People often asked her where she learned such compassion, and she would smile softly, recalling the patient hands that guided hers, the voice that told her stories, and the man who had once turned ordinary afternoons into lifelong lessons. Her answer was always simple: "From my grandfather." In truth, the tragedy at home that many might have expected never arrived. What could have been a lonely childhood in the absence of busy parents was instead transformed into a season of love and learning because of one man's choice to give kindness without measure. What the grandfather did with his own granddaughter was not something dark or harmful, but something quietly miraculous. He wove kindness into the fabric of her life so thoroughly that it became the foundation of who she was. He turned everyday moments into sacred ones, showing her that greatness is not found in wealth or fame, but in the way we choose to treat others. The world outside their home might have been full of noise and haste, but inside it was filled with laughter, patience, and love. And so the story of Samuel and Lily is not one of sorrow but of gentle triumph, a reminder that within the walls of an ordinary home, extraordinary kindness can flourish. It teaches us that the most powerful legacies are not built with monuments or riches, but with the quiet, steadfast acts of love that ripple outward, touching lives long after we are gone. In the end, what the grandfather did with his granddaughter was simple yet profound. He taught her how to live with kindness, and in doing so, he ensured that his love would never fade, carried forward in every smile she gave, every hand she held, and every heart she touched.